Hare Krishna,
Hare
everyone.
Krishna.
So we're
continuing here. We'll do one more at this session, one more verse. That which is expressed by material words or meditated upon by material mind is not ultimate truth. What, therefore, is actually good or bad within this insubstantial world of duality? And how can the extent of such good and bad be measured?
So what's your revelation on that?
That's tough. What, therefore, is actually good or bad within this insubstantial world of duality? And how can the extent of such good and bad be measured?
Should we read the purport and see?
Yeah, the actual truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything emanates, by whom everything is maintained, and in whom everything merges into rest. Material nature is the reflection of the absolute truth, and by the interaction of the material modes of nature, the innumerable varieties of matter appear to be separate, independent truths. Maya, or illusion, distracts the conditioned soul from the absolute truth and absorbs his mind in the glaring manifestation of matter, which ultimately is non-different from the absolute truth, being an emanation from him. The sense of good and bad as separate from the Supreme Lord is like the good and bad dreams experienced by a sleeping person. Good and bad dreams are equally unreal. Similarly, material good and evil have no permanent existence separate from the personality of Godhead.
Now, let's stop there.
Okay.
We'll read the next paragraph in a minute, but what did you get from what we just read there?
That they were saying, okay, the question was, how can the extent of such good and bad be measured? And the truth is, maybe it isn't measured. It's measured with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with Krishna. That it is an illusion. You know,
Okay.
that material nature reflects that, and it is hard for us to see. It's hard for us to interpret. It's again the awareness of going beyond what we see materially.
Yes.
And a lot of us do that. I'm that way. I make things in the shop. I'm always after doing what they call fruitive activities, and so that distracts you. That distracts you actually from what is what we're talking about, and that's kind of like the yin and the yang, or the duality that we have. Everything. A lot of people don't understand what duality was, and I didn't either before I read this. My son always knew about it, but I never grasped. I never grasped it, but now I do. And so it helps you. It's a step up the awareness ladder. When you see that, and it goes on a personal level. It goes on a family level. It goes on with villages, towns, states, communal, and the world. I mean, on a world scale, it's the duality is what's going on in Ukraine right now, and what good things are happening in other parts of the world that you don't hear so much about. But it's constantly changing.
Yes,
it's constantly changing. So it's something that you have to grasp, but it's like climbing a ladder. It's a slow process that you have to be aware of and to absorb yourself in.
Yeah, I guess very nice. Thank you. And I think a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, the majority of people in the world live in this what's good and what's bad. And a lot of times there's perpetual debate and discussion of whether something is good or bad, because what's the saying, and you have ducks and geese, what's good for the goose isn't always good for the gander.
That's right.
So what's good for one person is not always good for another.
Right.
And they say, one man's food is another man's poison. So like that, the point that I'm getting from this is that this world of duality, what is actually good and what is actually bad is not so black and white. And as you were saying, it's like the good dreams and bad dreams. Good dreams and bad dreams. Oh, I had a good dream last night. Oh, I had a very bad dream last night. But they're both not real.
Not real.
They're just dreams.
Right,
if you use that analogy of the sleeping person.
Right.
So when I'm asleep, whether I have a good dream or a bad dream, what does it matter? It was just a dream.
Just a dream. Yeah.
So here, now this is the difficult part, because you may in principle be like, yeah, we're with you, Jai and Michael, we got you.
Right.
But now apply that in your life when the next time something bad happens, and now how to do that, it's a real art, because we have to be conscientious of the fact that most people still live in that world of duality. So if something which we can all deem like bad happens, you're walking down the street and a lady trips over and falls and hurts her elbow, as you may have seen my wife did the other day when we were running.
Oh no.
See, oh no. But now imagine if you're like no longer in the world of duality and you just say, oh, no problem.
Have a good day.
That was just your karma.
Right.
That was just your karma.
Yeah.
Good or bad. Anyway, some good may come, some bad may come.
Yeah.
It's all the illusion. Meanwhile, blood's kind of pouring out of your arm, and your face has just been smeared against the pavement. But so we can take this knowledge and become overtly insensitive.
Yes.
Now, someone may argue that if you're overly sensitive, you're sentimental, and then you're just absorbed in the dualities. So if that happens, you, of course, would give kindness and care, because one soul to another soul would certainly always show care and support.
Compassion.
At the same time, we all have to very quickly move. You can't 6 days later still be like, oh, poor me, and the world is against me, and it's all bad, and my whole life's bad. It's like that is
you got to pick yourself up and
brush yourself off and move on,
mentally and physically. Right.
But the idea is first, as you said, coming up to the step on the ladder where you recognize, oh, this is a world of duality. For every, right now, it was so hot earlier. I walked down here and it was sweating, and now it's pouring down with rain outside. So it's like at the moment, it's like, is it raining? Is it sunny? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it good? Is it bad?
It's the world we live in.
It is the world we live in. To move beyond that and see that good or bad, either way, it's still just part of the illusion. It's just the clay figures coming together to do, or as Shakespeare said, and I think we said it once before, all the world's a stage, and we're merely players. So like that. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, that's great. That's great.
Should we read the second paragraph of the purport and see what actually these purports are not Srila Prabhupada's purports. These purports are Srila Prabhupada's disciples. They finished the Bhagavatam from the end of the 10th, the beginning of the 10th canto, the 13th or 14th chapter, up until the 12th canto. He empowered them, encouraged them, inspired them to do that. And I feel like these purports are packed full of nourishing nectar. So anyway, yes,
I like that. Nourishing nectar. Let's go to the second paragraph. The Supreme Lord is the well-wisher of everything, of every living entity, and therefore execution of His order is good, whereas disobeying His order is bad. Lord Krishna has created a perfect social and occupational system called Varnashrama Dharma.
Yeah, that's really close. Varnashram Dharma.
And the Lord has further given perfect spiritual knowledge in Bhagavad Gita and other literatures. Execution of Lord Krishna's order will bring complete social, psychological, and political, economic, and spiritual success to human society. We should not foolishly look for so-called good outside the other orders of the personality of Godhead. Such orders are called the laws of God and constitute the essence or substance of religion. There's a lot in there, and it's what I would think. Execution of Lord Krishna's order will bring complete social, psychological, political, economic, and spiritual success to human societies. And the day we live in, the Kali Yuga, that is not happening. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's not happening. And it's nice to read it and everything, but
although they say, what is it, on every dollar bill in this country, it says,
in God we trust.
In God we trust. Meanwhile, they remove God from the school systems. They remove God from anything to do with the government, more or less. But it's still there on the. And then what is the? I think the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, right.
One nation under
God.
One nation under God.
Yeah.
And so, initially it seems that, just talking about, in America, because we're here now, that in America they were really meant to be following the dictate of acting as servants of God. In God we trust. We're under God.
Right.
And taking shelter of God. And so the principle is there. And of course we know from the ancient times, the king was meant to be the representative of God.
Yes.
And he was the person that oversaw the protection of God's property and God's people. Of course, the unfortunate thing is this absolute, what is that saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolute power corrupts
absolutely.
And that's what we have today. That's the society. And it's not just the United States, it's all over the world.
It's all over the world, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Please, no disrespect to the United States.
Yeah.
Or West Virginians.
No, I like West Virginia. And so that's pretty much it.
Okay, should we?
Yeah.
Let's go for one more.
All right.
Text 5.
Although shadows, echoes, and mirages are only illusory reflections of the real things, such reflections do cause a semblance of meaningful or comprehensible perception. In the same way, although the identification of the conditioned soul with the material body, mind, and ego is illusory, this identification generates fear within him even up to the moment of death. Yeah, that's very true. So so we are those physical bodies. We are those that we live in material bodies and material world, and we see that is an illusory, or it's illusions. It's full of illusions, and the identification generates fear within him even up to the point of death. And that's really potent. That's really, that's a tough subject. But it happens. I've seen it happen. And, I've seen people who die at the very end of their life, they're fearful and they don't want to go. And they don't accept that. They don't accept losing their body. They think they're their body. They don't experience their soul. But what this is all about is that you shouldn't have a fear of death. You shouldn't. You're basically going back to where you came from. And you don't have the physical material body of this earth, but you have your spiritual body. You have your soul, which is part and parcel of God, and to take you on a path. And then you say, okay, then what happens next? Well, no one really knows. I mean, you point to people who have, but nobody has ever come back from death. Let's put it that way. Maybe to a certain extent, like Christ, but it's not a common occurrence. Let's put it that way. No matter how good you are in this world, no matter how bad you are, whether you're a Hitler or you're a Mother Teresa,
the duality, good and bad, good and bad.
You really don't know, but you're part and parcel of a spiritual being that oversees this whole universe and this tiny little minuscule atom in a dimension called it's not an atom, it's actually a small speck of an atom, which is this material earth that we tend to to inhabit this go around for anyway.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the meaning of it, and that would be so much better if everybody realized that, hey, it's just, we've done this, we've been here before, and we'll be here again. And it's part parcel of living in this era of that we live in.
Yeah, I mean, in one sense, that idea, coming back after death, in general, it's not like regularly we have people saying, hey, of course, we accept the principle of reincarnation, as you just alluded to. So in one sense, people do come back after death, and there have been some studies, and now his name, Ian, goodness, why am I forgetting his name? Ian something. You probably know it. Anyway, he did lots of research on the principle of reincarnation down in, I think it's Virginia University or Virginia Tech, one of those. And, lots of children who were having memories of previous lives when they were like 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. Yeah. And he started to research that, and he built up, amassed a wealth of proof. Right. That just scientific. He himself wasn't a believer in it. He just saw this phenomena and began to study it. Yeah. So in one sense, we do accept that people are coming back after death, but usually they're not coming back with the memory. Also, we know that people have these OBEs and NDEs, out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences, and people kind of come back saying, I was floating above the table, I was pulled towards a white light, I heard voices, or sometimes they say I saw angels and things like this, and then I came back in my body, and they can tell the doctor things he was saying. If he was, chatting up the nurse or saying swear words, or saying, get this or get that, or did something. So, these kind of, but clinically the person was dead. Dead.
With heartbeat.
Yeah, without heartbeat, and they're like, oh my God, this person's dead, flatline, beep. So like that. But, very, very much true that, it's not that people have really come back and said, oh, I went here. Now, of course, we also do accept that the Lord sends His divine representatives. And you mentioned Jesus. We accept the Lord sent Him for the purpose of teaching, guiding, and bringing people back to Him. He sends other representatives, sadhus and sages. And there are persons who, He sends, like we would say, Srila Prabhupada is a representative. He's been sent by God to. So we see, and also we understand that this cycle of reincarnation is something that we do want to get out of.
Yes.
We want to escape from what's known as samsara, the cycle of birth and death. So really, in one sense, we can see and say that, there is existence after death, and you're either caught in the continuous cycle, or you return back to the spiritual world and your eternal spiritual body there, and or even from there you could be sent back here by Krishna directly as a
devotee, or as
a representative or devotee to come and help to guide other people. So then there are different ideas. Now, of course, we say all that sitting here, and if there was a third person, let's say from an atheistic or only scientific perspective, he would say, bravo, all sounds very nice, prove it. Prove it,
No such proof.
And then we could punch his lights out and say, you let us know how it works out. We wouldn't do that, honestly. But like that. Just quickly, because actually, it's very hard for us to just keep.
I know. Once we get on a roll, we roll.
But I like this analogy again, and it's so powerful analogies for helping us to understand. Because otherwise, if you just say it, you're like, yeah, but what does that look like? So shadows, echoes, and mirages are illusory reflections of real things. Right?
Yeah.
and such reflections cause a semblance of meaningful or comprehensible perception. So if you're in the desert and you see a mirage, the typical, and you're like, you feel,
there's water,
hope, there's water, shade, and then you keep running and it keeps moving, and then you're like, oh, it's gone.
Yeah.
But it created something within you that appeared to be real. Yes. And then it says, in the same way, although the identification of the conditioned soul with the material body, mind, and ego is illusory, this identification generates fear, as you focused on, within him, even up to the moment of death. So these things are actually illusory. They're simply temporary manifestations. They're not eternal. They're not lasting. They're changing perpetually. But we become so attached to them, to our opinions, to our concepts, to our friends and family, to our house, to our work, or our play, or our children, or whatever it is. We become attached to these things, this I, me, and my. I-ness, my-ness, mine. But these things are simply temporary. And we can become so attached to these things that people fight and bicker and fall out. All over this stuff. We make a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah. And that's not to say that we stop doing stop working or something.
Yes.
It's just that you have to be aware. It's a key word, as my son will attest to, is awareness. And that's all. It's basically awareness. Just be aware of it, and be aware of it. I struggle with it all the time. Ask my wife Allison; she'll definitely tell you that. I'm a duality. I'm a walking duality. And then there's people who are bipolar, and they're way up and down. I'm not that bad, but I'm bad. I'm not all good. I'm not sitting here being a little saint, because she sees this, she'd be running with a club to beat me. No, not really.
She wouldn't really.
Yeah.
She's such a sweet person.
But there's so many things that you can become aware of that you aren't aware of, and it's always good to be around new and different people, and not be afraid to ask them questions and to gain knowledge from knowledge that they have, and give knowledge that you have to them. That's what it's all about. It's all about a way of communicating. And this day and age, it's real hard to communicate with lots of people. It's just like they all speak English, that's for sure. That god awful language, and I'm not an English lover, as we know. But it does have its attributes. Let's put it that way. And this is one of them. So it's definitely a duality that we live in. And that's no part of awareness. I was, like I said, I only became aware of duality with my son talking about it, and then was reading this, and finally it took me a good year or so to absorb of reading these before I even knew what they were talking about when they said duality.
Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Ki Jai.
I mean, without Srila Prabhupada giving us this knowledge, we sometimes say Om Agana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militangena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. By the mercy of the spiritual master, my eyes have been opened with the torchlight of knowledge.
Wow, that's
so now I can see. Before that, I was born into the darkest of ignorance.
That's it.
And now I can see.
Yeah.
So thank you, Srila Prabhupada.
Yes. Yeah, and I will say one other thing. This you think, oh, they're just they're just Hare Krishnas and Prabhupada, but there's their guru and all that. But there are different paths up the mountain. There are many paths up the mountain. But why do we concentrate on this? Because a lot of those paths don't have the information that this. Now, I don't want to I don't want to make it seem like Prabhupada did translate this. But originally they all came from the Vedas, that's where that knowledge had for 5,000 years ago, and it's whatever it takes in this day and age. This is a light beam from Prabhupada of spiritual knowledge or transcendental knowledge that needs to be heard and seen more often than it actually is.
If you're a lost ship at sea, and you see a
beacon,
or
a lighthouse.
I mean, you're not going to say whose lighthouse is that.
Yeah, right. Should we go there or not?
I'm not going there. You know? So like that.
That's
so,
a good analogy because that's where we are today. we need some.
You're lost and you can be found. And,
we need some good advice. We need some good thoughts, good spiritual thoughts, good transcendental knowledge. Transcendental is funny. Don't look it up in the dictionary because it doesn't really
do it justice.
No, it doesn't do it justice. It has to do with the spiritual knowledge. That's basically it, and that's what we're talking about here. And it comes in many different forms, but it all is good. It is all for the good of people's mental health, their physical health, countries. It's and so we're not saying this is the only path to reaching Godhead, but it certainly is the strongest that we've encountered, and it's clear.
And clear,
very clear.
The blaze, there might be other paths across this mountain beside us, the Appalachian. But the trail has been blazed, so you may as well follow that.
You couldn't ever pick up the Vedas because it's in Sanskrit. You can't even read it. And so that's why this is basically what Prabhupada did was he translated it all. He made it so it's easy to read, not easy to read, but accessible. Until him, there was no other translation of this, and this took him something like 12 years or more. How many years? More than that. Because he was writing 14, it before he even came to the United States.
25 like that.
And he's still not really that well known in the world.
Absolutely.
It's just a tiny, small speck of knowledge that's there, but that doesn't mean that another 100 years or whatever it could happen.
Yeah.
So
I think we should finish there.
Yes.
So we keep it at a bite size.
Yeah.
Which is hard for us because we like big bites. So we're going to finish there. Thank you again.
Okay.
Very much, Michael, for your association.
Thank you for
and your enlivening wisdom and inspiration and reflections on the Bhagavatam, and for being so inspired to read. Chapter 28 is almost the last chapter. What does it go up to? 30
It was at 30, yeah. Right.
So 2 chapters from the end of 11.
31.
And then he'll be starting, or 3 chapters. Then you'll be starting the 12th canto,
which is real small.
Very small, and he will have completed the Bhagavatam. How many of us out there can say we've read the entire Bhagavatam? This is incredible. So I just want to congratulate you. In 3 years, you've taken and read the entire Bhagavatam.
Jai is from London, and
well, I'm from here.
He's from here, yeah. He's from, but he lives in London. So I promise you, the day that I finish it, I will call you.
Yay! I hope so. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll start over again.
Here.
I'll start over again. I will read it to the rest. I'll read it the rest of my life. Because there's too much there that I can. It's absorbed. Nobody can remember it all. It's really it's beyond anybody. But it certainly is. Puts a smile on my face when I read chapters like this.
That's amazing. Thank you all very, very much. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna.